June 6, 1944. The gray Atlantic swells crash against the Normandy cliffs. Somewhere near Yerville-sur-Mer, a German sentry in a concrete bunker rubs sleep from his eyes, peers through slits in the steel door, and sees them. Dark shapes gliding toward the shore, hundreds of them, under a sky streaked with tracer fire. He grabs the field telephone. His voice cracks as he shouts into it. Within minutes, the report climbs the chain, from a coastal battery to the 352nd Infantry Division headquarters, then to 7th Army, and finally to the ornate chateau at Saint-Germain-en-Laye, where Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, commander of all German forces in the West, is finishing his breakfast. An aide bursts in. Herr Feldmarschall, landings reported in Normandy, multiple sectors, airborne troops inland. Von Rundstedt sets down his cup. He does not stand. He has been expecting something, but not this, not here. Calmly, almost wearily, he asks, "How strong?" "Unclear, sir. Possibly diversionary." Von Rundstedt nods. Diversionary, of course. Everyone knows the real blow will fall at Pas-de-Calais, the shortest route to the Ruhr, the industrial heart of the Reich. That is where the Führer has concentrated the panzers. That is where George S. Patton, America's most feared field commander, is waiting with his Third Army. Or so they believe. You can picture the map on the wall behind von Rundstedt. Red arrows pointing toward Calais, thick defensive lines drawn in grease pencil. For months, Allied radio traffic has painted the picture clearly. Dummy landing craft crowd the ports of southeast England. Inflatable tanks and wooden aircraft litter fields visible from the air. In the chatter, endless careless chatter, intercepted by German listening posts. Patton barking orders, staff officers discussing tides and fuel dumps, all of it screaming one unmistakable message. The invasion is coming across the Strait of Dover. So von Rundstedt does what any cautious commander would do. He waits. He does not release the panzer reserves. Not yet. Back on the beaches, the morning light reveals a different reality. American Rangers scale the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc. Paratroopers of the 101st Airborne fight through hedgerows miles inland. The tide is bringing in bodies and burning landing craft, but it is also bringing in men, thousands upon thousands, who are not turning back. By 9 a.m., the reports can no longer be dismissed as raids. Yet still, the German High Command hesitates, because Patton has not moved, because the greatest invasion armada in history has somehow slipped past every watcher, every reconnaissance flight, every logical expectation. How did the Allies pull off the impossible? How did they convince an entire enemy high command to look the wrong way while the real dagger plunged into Normandy? To understand the disbelief now settling over Saint-Germain-en-Laye like morning fog, we have to go back to the winter of 1943, when a handful of British and American officers began weaving one of the most audacious military deceptions in military history. Operation Fortitude was about to be born, and the ghost army it created would soon have the Germans chasing shadows, while the real storm broke somewhere else entirely. Winter 1943. Dover, England. A cold rain lashes the cliffs as a convoy of trucks rumbles into a muddy field near Folkestone. Soldiers in American uniforms leap out, shouting orders in crisp Midwestern accents. They unload crates, erect tents, lay out rows of vehicles under camouflage netting. To any Luftwaffe reconnaissance pilot flying overhead on a rare, clear day, it looks exactly like what the Allies want it to look like. The staging ground for a massive invasion army. But step closer. Those vehicles are rubber. Inflatable Sherman tanks, complete with painted shadows and canvas treads that flutter convincingly in the wind. The artillery pieces are plywood cutouts. The landing craft bobbing in the harbors from Harwich to Ramsgate are hollow mock-ups built from canvas and steel tubing, crewed by a handful of sailors who spend their days moving them around to simulate loading and unloading. This is the 1st United States Army Group, FUSOG, commanded, on paper, by the one man the Germans fear more than any other, Lieutenant General George S. Patton. Patton, fresh from his triumphs in Sicily, slapped for striking a shell-shocked soldier, temporarily sidelined. The perfect choice. The Germans know his aggressive style. They know he craves the spotlight. They expect him to lead the main thrust. So, the Allies give the enemy exactly what they expect to see. In a quiet office in London, a small team under Brigadier Dudley Clark, the mastermind behind earlier deceptions in North Africa, works alongside American officers from the Joint Security Control. They script radio traffic with meticulous care. Operators mimic Patton's distinctive drawl, transmit routine orders about fuel shortages, complaints about British weather, even arguments over strategy. All of it carefully leaked on frequencies the Germans are known to monitor. Double agents feed the illusion. Juan Pujol Garcia, codenamed Garbo, the Spanish businessman turned Allied spy, sends encrypted messages to his Abwehr handlers in Madrid, praising the massive buildup opposite Calais. Another agent, Brutus, a captured Polish officer turned, confirms sightings of Patton inspecting troops in Kent. You can almost hear the German analysts in Berlin poring over the reports. Maps marked with new divisions, photographs showing what look like endless rows of tanks, intercepts filled with American slang and logistical details that feel too real to be invented. By spring 1944, the deception is complete. Fusag appears on German intelligence summaries as a juggernaut, 15 divisions, hundreds of thousands of men, all poised to strike the shortest route across the Channel. Field Marshal von Rundstedt reads the latest Abwehr assessment and nods grimly. The Pas de Calais is fortified accordingly. The 15th Army, over 200,000 troops, stands ready there. Panzer Group West keeps its armored divisions close to the Seine, waiting for Patton. Meanwhile, the real invasion force gathers in secrecy along England's southwest coast. The ports of Plymouth, Southampton, Portsmouth brim with actual ships and men hidden under strict blackout, dispersed in small harbors, shielded by smoke generators and electronic jamming. No one leaks. No reconnaissance flight spots the Armada. The weather itself conspires. Stormy skies ground the Luftwaffe for days. And Patton? He plays his part to perfection. He tours eastern England in a highly visible jeep convoy, stops for publicized speeches, lets himself be photographed scowling at maps. The Germans devour every image. By May, even Hitler is convinced. He tells his staff at the Berghof, the main attack will come in the Pas de Calais. Patton will lead it. The trap is set. But deceptions this large are fragile things. One careless word, one sharp-eyed pilot, one skeptical analyst could unravel everything. And as June approaches, with the tides and moon finally aligning for the real crossing, the Allies hold their breath. Will the Germans swallow the bait completely, or will they wake up in time to shift the panzers west and throw the invaders back into the sea? June 6, 1944, mid-morning. The chateau at Saint-Germain-en-Laye hums with urgency. Telephones ring incessantly. Aides cluster around maps, pinning new reports as fast as they arrive. Utah Beach breached. Omaha contested but holding. Gold, Juno, Sword, all seeing Allied troops pushing inland. Field Marshal von Rundstedt stands at the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out over manicured gardens that feel absurdly calm against the chaos unfolding 60 miles away. He turns to his chief of staff, General Blumentritt. Request release of the Panzer Reserves. The call goes to OKW in Berchtesgaden. The reply comes back crisp. The Führer is sleeping, no major decisions until he wakes. Hitler had gone to bed late, exhausted from late-night briefings, confident the real storm was still brewing across from Dover. His aides, fearing his wrath, dare not disturb him. Hours tick by. Precious, irreversible hours. Meanwhile, on the Normandy roads, American and British troops pour off the beaches. Engineers bulldoze obstacles. Infantry fights through villages whose names will soon echo in history. Sainte-Mère-Église, Carentan, Bayeux. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, commander of Army Group B, is nowhere near the front. He is hundreds of miles away, in Herrlingen, Germany, celebrating his wife's birthday. He had left the coast convinced any invasion would come later, and certainly at Calais. When the first reports reach him by telephone, he races back towards France, but the roads are clogged, the trains delayed. By early afternoon, the picture clarifies. This is no feint. 5 full divisions are ashore, with more landing every hour. Airborne forces have seized key bridges and causeways. Yet the Panzer divisions, Panzer Lehr, 12th SS Hitler Youthgung, the mighty 1st SS Leibstandart, remain frozen east of the Seine. Their commanders pace, engines idling, awaiting orders that do not come. At last, around 3 p.m., Hitler stirs. Briefed in the Berghof's sunlit map room, he listens to the flood of reports. His reaction is not panic, but stubborn certainty. This is the diversion. The real attack will still come at Pas de Calais. Patton has not appeared. He releases only 2 panzer divisions for immediate commitment to Normandy, and even those must report directly to him before counterattacking. The bulk of the armored reserve stays put, guarding against the phantom blow. You can feel the frustration rippling through the German chain of command.
Rommel, finally reaching his headquarters at La Roche-Guillaume that evening, slams his cap on the table. "If we don't stop them in the first 48 hours, we may never stop them," he tells his staff. But the 48 hours are already slipping away. Because every hour the panzers wait, the Allies strengthen their lodgment. Mulberry harbors begin assembly. PLO pipelines prepare to pump fuel directly from England. And across the channel, the dummy camps of Fusog continue their performance. Radio operators transmitting fresh traffic, inflatable tanks shifted to new positions, landing craft mock-ups churning water in Dover harbors. German reconnaissance flights, when they finally brave the Allied air umbrella, return with photographs showing the buildup opposite Calais still intact. Patton's army, it seems, has not moved an inch. The deception holds. But cracks are beginning to show. A few sharp-eyed intelligence officers note inconsistencies. Why has no major air assault hit Calais? Why are the Normandy landings so massive if they are merely secondary? As night falls on D-Day, with Allied beachheads linked and expanding, the question hangs in the smoke-filled war rooms of the Reich. How long can a ghost army keep the wolves at bay before the real hunters break free and overrun the Norman countryside?
June 7th, 1944. Dawn breaks over the Normandy hedgerows, thick with the acrid smoke of burning vehicles and the distant thunder of naval guns. Allied troops dig in, expanding their fragile foothold. Engineers wrestle with mulberry components in the surf. Medics haul wounded to makeshift aid stations under relentless Luftwaffe strafing. Sporadic, desperate, but not enough to stem the tide. Far to the east, in the fortified ports of Calais and Boulogne, the German 15th Army waits. Over 200,000 men, hundreds of artillery pieces, coastal batteries that could have pulverized the Normandy beaches. They wait for an invasion that never comes, because the ghost is still marching. In the fields of Kent and Essex, the performance continues unabated. Crews inflate new rubber tanks to replace any deflated by weather. Actors in American uniforms, British soldiers with perfect accents, drive jeeps in endless loops, kicking up dust visible from 20,000 feet. Radio nets crackle with fabricated urgency, simulated arguments between Patton's staff about delayed shipping, complaints of overcrowding in Dover docks, even staged leaks about imminent embarkation. Agent Garbo transmits his masterpiece on June 9, a long message to Madrid, warning his handlers that the Normandy landings are a feint, designed to draw reserves away from the decisive blow at Pas de Calais, still weeks away. The Abwehr swallows it whole, forwarding it urgently to Berlin. Hitler reads the intercept and nods. "See, I was right." The 15th Army stays put. Panzer divisions trickle into Normandy, too few, too slow, but the bulk of the armored fist remains poised against shadows. You can imagine Rommel at La Roche-Guillaume, pacing the grand halls of his chateau headquarters, maps spread across a Renaissance table. His face gaunt, eyes burning. He cables OKW repeatedly. "The enemy is strengthening hourly. We must commit everything now." The replies are evasive. The Führer's orders stand. By mid-June, the Allies have 1 million men ashore. Cherbourg falls after bitter fighting. Caen becomes a meat grinder, but the beachhead holds. And still, German reconnaissance pilots report back. The buildup opposite Dover is growing, not shrinking. New divisions appear on aerial photos, carefully staged movements of dummy landing craft at night, lights flickering to mimic activity. Even as Allied bombers pound German supply lines, the deception teams innovate. They broadcast fake headquarters chatter from moving transmitters, simulating Patton's command post advancing toward embarkation points. Double agents report confirmed sightings of the general himself, scowling at delays. The strain shows on the German side. Field Marshal von Rundstedt, exhausted by the contradictions, tells his staff in a rare moment of candor, "If this is a diversion, it is the most convincing one in history." By June 9th, the dam finally breaks. Von Rundstedt is relieved of command, sacked for pessimism after suggesting peace overtures. His replacement, Field Marshal Günther von Kluge, arrives full of zeal, but soon succumbs to the same grim reality. Yet even von Kluge cannot immediately shift the 15th Army. Weeks of fortitude have bought the Allies something priceless: time. Time to build ports, stockpile ammunition, break out from the bocage. By late July, as Operation Cobra unleashes American armor across the Cotentin Peninsula, German units in Normandy are outnumbered, outgunned, isolated. The Falaise Pocket begins to form, a killing ground where entire armies will be encircled.
But the Ghost Army's greatest triumph is measured not in battles won, but in battles never fought. The 15th Army, those hundreds of thousands of men who could have crushed the invasion in its cradle, remains glued to the Pas-de-Calais coastline until August, long after Normandy is secure. Only then do the orders come to move west. By then, it is far too late. As Patton's real Third Army, finally unleashed and slicing across France in lightning thrusts, the irony hangs heavy in the air. The Germans spent months fearing the wrong general in the wrong place. But how complete was the victory of this grand illusion? Did any German leader ever grasp the full scope of the deception that doomed their Western defenses? Or did the truth die with them in the rubble of the Reich? August 1944. The Normandy front has collapsed. American tanks under Patton's real Third Army, now unleashed and racing across France, slice through retreating German columns like a scythe through ripe wheat. Paris falls on August 25th. Brussels is liberated days later. The Ghost Army's work is done, but its echoes linger in the shattered war rooms of the Reich. At La Roche-Guyon, what remains of Rommel's staff packs crates in grim silence. The Desert Fox himself is gone, implicated in the July 20 bomb plot, forced to take cyanide weeks earlier. His final warnings about Allied deception, scribbled in frantic memos, now read like prophecy. Field Marshal von Kluge, his successor, faces the abyss. Trapped between Hitler's delusions and the relentless Allied advance, he drives into no man's land on August 19th and swallows poison rather than report failure. In his last letter to the Führer, he writes of the enemy's superior deception and the fatal misplacement of reserves. Further east, in the concrete bunkers of the Wolf's Lair, Hitler rages at maps showing the Western Front unraveling. He demands explanations. Intelligence officers shuffle forward with aerial photographs, now unmistakably clear, of empty fields in southeast England. The inflatable tanks have been deflated and packed away, the dummy landing craft towed back to storage, the radio nets gone silent. For the first time, the scale of the lie sinks in. Operation Fortitude did not just delay a few panzer divisions, it paralyzed an entire army group for crucial months. It bought the Allies the breathing room to turn a perilous beachhead into an unstoppable juggernaut. Historians will later calculate the cost. Without the deception, German armor could have reached the beaches in force within days, potentially hurling the invaders back into the sea. Instead, the Wehrmacht bled out in Normandy. Over 400,000 German casualties, entire divisions annihilated in the Falaise pocket. The road to the Rhine, and eventually Berlin, lay open. You can imagine the surviving German generals in the final months, huddled in damp bunkers as Allied bombers thunder overhead. Men like General Speidel, Rommel's former chief of staff, or captured officers interrogated by Allied intelligence. They speak of it with a mixture of admiration and bitterness, how a handful of artists, actors, radio operators, and spies conjured an army from rubber and airwaves. How they, the proud inheritors of Prussian military tradition, were outwitted not by brute force, but by illusion. One captured Abwehr colonel reportedly laughed until he cried. We prepared for Patton's thunder and were defeated by his shadow. In the end, the disbelief that gripped von Rundstedt that foggy June morning never fully lifted. It evolved into something deeper, a haunting realization that the war in the West had been lost not just on the battlefield, but in the mind. Operation Fortitude remains one of history's greatest feats of deception, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapon is not steel or fire, but the art of making your enemies see exactly what you want them to see. And in the quiet aftermath, as Europe rebuilt from the ashes, those who lived it carried the memory of a phantom army that changed the course of the war without ever firing a shot.